be a good way to meet new people. I mean, aren't you always complaining that there's nothing to do?
I'm not complaining. I just figured for a date we could do something other than a Bible study.
It's a church fellowship.
Why do I have to dress like I'm going to church?
Christy, can you please just do what I asked you to do for once, please?
Welcome back to Boys Bible Study. Boys Bible Study. There's a certain chill in the air this month. And we are celebrating by spotlighting Christian horror films all month. As always, I'm Ash, here with my co-host,
Scott.
And unfortunately, our co-host, Julian, could not be here. It's okay. He's just in the next room. He's feeling a little under the weather. He's fine. Come back another time.
I don't know when exactly, but another time.
Just come back another time. He'll be back.
He wants you to leave.
He wants you to leave. He needs his rest. Leave him alone. We're back. Really special movie coming this week. And part of the reason we're so excited to review it is that it is by a filmmaker, a female filmmaker, which, you know, wouldn't seem like such a big deal to point out, except for even in the world of DIY films, it's such a rare gem to find a female filmmaker working, auteur style with her own cinematic universe. And recently, as of the past couple months, we have become a fan of Jasmine Deanne Andrews.
We discovered her thanks to Letterboxd, I believe. And we previously covered her movie that she co-directed, co-produced, The Robot, the Creator, which was a big hit. It might take the Golden Calf Awards. I wouldn't say it's impossible.
Yeah, it's Golden Calf bait, I think. You know, every year we like to wrap up our own podcast worth of years of reviews by giving out Golden Calf Awards for excellence in Christian filmmaking. I would say Jasmine Deanne Andrews is in the running for The Robot, the Creator, because that was a film that completely took us by storm, stopped us in our tracks. We showed it on a stream for our patrons, and it was extremely popular. And when we found it, it had 400 views or something.
72, I think.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it was less than 100. It was less than 100
so
views
crazy.
When I got the link, yeah.
That's so crazy because it is such an entertaining film. I mean, obviously made on a low budget, but that's totally fine with us. And what it does just with, a group of friends and a creative plot is pretty damn remarkable. And I would say the same thing about The Curse of Eve. Jasmine Deanne Andrews is a director with a vision who likes to tell really exciting stories.
Really, and really a lot going on in the stories. A lot of multiple characters being considered with their paths and the way they go together. And as far as no budget stuff goes, extremely coherent in its nuance.
Completely. I just couldn't help but notice on IMDb lists Jasmine Deanne Andrews is having 2 wins and 11 nominations. And I'm like, wow, did the Golden Calf Awards come out already? But no, she has entered multiple films in the World's Music and Independent Film Festival, as well as something called the Couch Film Festival. I don't know what that's about. I do not understand the world of indie film festivals. It's just beyond me.
You know what? I have continued to work in them throughout the years, and they make less sense to me than ever.
It's like it's like when you start studying the Kabbalah or whatever. It's like the closer you get to documented truths of God's being, the more esoteric it becomes.
Yeah.
I think such is the case with film festival culture as well. Jasmine is known. We know her for The Robot, the Creator. I do not currently see that one listed on her IMDb page, but other than the one we're about to discuss, The other one, just based on title alone, that I'm very intrigued by is from 2021. It's called Natalie's Abortion.
Yes, I think that is likely also a good movie. I've just been a little scared to dive in, but we will.
We probably will. It's just that, there are some weeks where you're just like, oh, do I really want to like bum myself out this week? And honestly, half the time the answer is yes. We do that all the time on the show.
Yes.
So don't think that we're not capable of it.
Yeah. As two huge fans of Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah, for real. Absolutely in my top 20 of all time. Or even just like on this show alone, we'll be like, yeah, I don't know. Let's just watch this other film about the Columbine High School shooting. Like, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so listen, there's nothing we won't take on, but we're saving Natalie's Abortion for another week. That is okay, because in the month of October, when we're spotlighting Christian horror and thrillers, The Curse of Eve was a pretty damn good choice. It had some, pretty standard horror movie themes, but it was also like a very tense and stressful thriller just on its own, even without leaning into, things like ghosts or hallucinations, which are a theme in this movie.
Yeah, it really was. Successful thriller, successful tension, successful use of a smoke detector battery that needed to be replaced.
Oh my God.
The score was great, which Jasmine Deanne Andrews did herself. I know there were a few like soundtrack songs, but she did the score. And I don't know, the tension worked. Something about the smoke detector too. Well, first of all, what were you gonna say about it?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say that I honestly was seeking through the movie and trying to pause and identify the sound because I could not tell if it was happening in my garage or not. Like,
oh man,
I rent like every so often a detector just goes off from something that I've never confronted before because I didn't put it there. So I was like, what the fuck is that? But no, I realized, no, that was just the main characters in the film. It was going off the entire movie, literally the entire movie. Contributed, I think, to the tension. It might have honestly been intentional.
I was thinking that by like the final quarter of the movie.
Yeah, it really fit.
I was like, how could you have not changed it by now unless you, like, maybe it wasn't a choice at first, but then he's like, no, it's really in here and we don't have time to go back and reshoot this stuff.
Yeah, and it's like contributing to the claustrophobic, like, domestic drama that's unfolding. After all, like, this is about a couple in a, moving to a less than perfect house in the middle of nowhere. Like, why wouldn't their, carbon monoxide detector or whatever the fuck be going off all the time?
Yeah, and not fixing problems that are like in plain sight. Like in the first place, like early on, he's complaining about the husband is complaining about having to fix the hole in the ceiling, but it's like a huge hole. It's like, well, you can't not see it. It's like,
yeah,
very
you gotta
obvious.
fix that.
Looks like a problem.
Yeah, the house should be fucking condemned. So maybe that's where we were at with the smoke detector. Now, Scott, before we go on, this may be an aside. I just remembered you specifically said to me, make sure you watch all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm.
But now I realize I'm not sure if I did that.
You got to watch Beyond the Credits.
Okay, I didn't watch Beyond the Credits. Should I like do that really quick?
Yeah, it's like 20 seconds.
Okay, here, I'll stay. We're probably cutting this out. I'll stay on the horn really quick. Don't mind me while I.
Okay. Yeah.
It was just one of those things where, like,
you're going to be shocked.
I remember you said that, and then, like, as soon as the credits started rolling, I was like, oh, cool. Okay, bye.
Yeah, you got to do it. I'll set up the beginning while you look for the end.
Okay, that's teamwork.
So it opens up. We see that our main character, Christie, she's going to be graduating from college. She's 22. She's with her boyfriend, who's 30. We saw him before as one of the goofball scientist in The Robot, the Creator. He had a pretty prominent role. Not the main kid, not as big a role here, but one of a pretty big role. And
Oh no.
I know.
Glad I caught up.
I know. There could be the Curse of Eve too. What's the bad husband's name?
In this movie,
Yeah.
his name is Grant. I knew it was with a G.
Grant.
Grant and Christie. Those are our newlyweds in this film.
And early on, Grant is like, "Oh, I feel old when I'm around your friends. I feel 30." And he's at the graduation party in a tuxedo t-shirt. He's wearing a sticker on it that says, "Hello, I'm," and then he wrote, "Sexy and I know it," in Sharpie.
Jesus.
And he's wearing a free hugs t-shirt later. He's a cool guy.
You know what? I didn't put all of those things together. Like, I took each one in individually and I was like, all right, but considering them as a part of, like, that's the way he expresses himself to the world, you know, this is one of those goofballs. Okay. One of those goofballs that should be punished harshly for their crimes. That's all I'll say.
And you know, we might have a harsher take on the punishment for him just based on how he presents himself than others do. But
Sure.
Other people do find him more lovable as it becomes a major part of the movie later on when now I'm connecting this a little more. He feels old with the younger women who just graduated college. He did not go to college, or he did not graduate. I forget what the case was, but he did not finish college. And then once they move, which happens early on in the movie, then he's around older ladies and he's feeling good about himself.
Right. All of a sudden, he's a young piece of Christian ass.
Exactly.
A young piece of the communion wafer.
Young prayer warrior.
He is. Yeah, he's a young prayer warrior. And, you know, what was so neat about watching this in a Jasmine Deanne Andrews film is that genuinely big compliment I can give to Ms. Andrews is that she really has a way of revealing character details that escalate over time. Like, I'm so used to watching DIY Christian movies where stuff like that, like stuff that you just said about Grant, that would just be like data we would get, and it wouldn't actually influence like how he would act later in the movie.
Yeah.
Or how people perceive him. But like, she's like telling a story. Like, these are characters that have, you know, different layers to them, and those little clues they give you about themselves are revealed. Like, there's a clever story narrative payoff for them, you know? Like,
yes,
I just think she's raised the bar.
Absolutely. And she gives little clues for any new scenario she presents. Like, how many times have we seen in a movie that we've covered, somebody gets a new job, for example? We
all the time.
Take it at face value that, like, it's just a place you're going to for the most part. Actually, I guess most recently with The Forge, there was further meaning to the job about who was behind it.
Sure.
But a lot of the time it is just a job, and it's just like a place to, it's more about the environment that the character is going into.
Yes.
But like in this case, Grant gets offered a job by somebody to go to these houses that are being foreclosed. And it clearly has to do with like the 2008 housing crisis. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like legally shaky, it sounds like. And this is kind of like in passing in the background, because he's like, oh, there's like these houses. He got these houses. And then it kind of like comes up in the background that it's like, why did all these people leave? And she's like looking into things about the land they're on too, because she thinks the house is haunted, and like does some research there, and then like sees that like indigenous population that was there has never been like had things made right, and just feels weird about that.
Right.
And so she like goes to what was the tribe called? Do you remember?
Oh man, you know what? It was in the credits. I can look it up. But
Okay.
but yeah, you know what you're saying in general is like there were all these just like environmental storytelling aspects.
Yeah, environmental storytelling aspects, and she was like had reasons behind it without it being like fully explained. Like it felt in a very natural way, and it made sense for the building of the tension for what she was experiencing.
Absolutely, yeah. Like that's a good example of the to use your example of the idea that the houses they're moved into possibly being foreclosed, but it's not really a huge theme, but it's part of the environment. In the beginning of the film, the couple's in love. You know, she trusts Grant, and Grant is trying to make a name for himself, you know, to support for his wife. And, you know, it's like, I'm not trying to spoil exactly how it ends with their relationship, but like, it's one of those things where like he says, you know, she asks him, well, why are the houses foreclosed? And he's basically like, well, I don't know, you know? And, you know, she worries for a split second, like, are you sure everything's okay with this? And he's like, yeah, of course it is. Like he's excited to be made a business partner and of his boss who's trusts him to do that. And she, as his wife, you know, respects that like he as a man is trying to provide for her. And so she wants to be supportive. You know, he is working. He's trying to make more money. She at the moment doesn't have a job. And he clearly wants to prove himself. So she says, you know what? We'll try this. It seems exciting to you. And it's really good horror movie storytelling. That little detail of tension is just sort of, it's not addressed at the time and it's left to fester. And then there's all these like little details like that emerge throughout the film.
Yeah, I just think the level of nuance just that went throughout it was just we don't usually see that, and I don't see that in a lot of movies that I watch at all.
Yeah, not even
like
just
across the board.
Yeah, like not exactly. Like that's the thing. It's not even just like, oh yeah, these stupid fucking movies we watch every week where it's like, you know, oh no, we're complaining about the lack of subtlety in the new Braden Sorbo movie or whatever.
Yeah,
like, sure, we know what we're getting into. So maybe our guard was down and we weren't really like expecting someone to deliver. But it's not just that. It's also, you know, movies you watch on TV or in the fucking movie theater. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't want to say too much about Megalopolis. Scott hasn't seen it quite yet, but like, Megalopolis got me thinking about how like, it seems like such a weird movie, but also the way that people talk in mainstream, like big budget theater releases right now is not normal. I would describe. It doesn't feel like natural or realistic, you know? So I think I was just kind of surprised that this low budget film was as naturalistic as it was, you know?
Yes. And
the bar's low.
Along those lines too, I think I have not seen Megalopolis yet, as you pointed out. But am I wrong in thinking that there might be some amount of green screen going on in it?
Oh yeah.
Some bizarre sets that possibly, if you aren't directed very carefully, would lead to some weird acting.
Oh my God, 100%.
Okay, great. Because I thought that the set design in this, like, I was really thinking, like, I wonder if she just, like, she did actually have access to abandoned houses first and then wrote the scripts around those. Because the set design was just, like, immaculate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you don't get those kind of sets in a movie.
I know. Actually, that's a great tip for a DIY filmmaker, like an aspiring, hey, I want to make a film. I'm developing my idea, but, you know, I don't have a lot of money. I'd probably film it with my friends in my hometown. I would say go around and realistically find out where's the craziest looking place that you could film a movie in for hours and no one would bother you, and then just write the movie about that.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. Start
That's
with
a
that.
really good technique.
Start with what you got. And then you'd save your own megalopolis for later after you've made a few of these.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, make like 2 or 3 movies, and then you can make Megalopolis.
Exactly.
So hey, I think Jasmine is due. You know, she's made a couple, so she could make her magnum opus pretty soon.
Definitely. And I don't think we said enough about the lead yet either. Christie, whoever played her, she was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Actor's name is Megan Renee. By the way, Grant is played by Mel Thomas. Can't promise that we'll remember those, but credit where it's due. What were you going to say about Christie, the main character?
She was good in this. I liked her.
She was good. She was real.
Uh-huh.
Like both of them were. Like legitimately, Christie and Grant, I have like encountered that couple before. Or just seen them out.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly.
And they have interesting circumstances. Yeah, go on.
They do. Okay. So going on from what the actual plot is. So she graduates college with a art education degree. And she's looking for jobs, not finding something yet. And it's a little fraught at home. After a bit, since Grant does work, he comes home from dinner and goes, "How's the job search going?" And she's like, "Bad. How was work?" And he's like, "I worked." I was like, "Geez."
So, babe, how's the job hunt going? Well, that don't sound good, but it'll come. It will come.
How's your day?
I worked.
I get it. You're working. She's not. But then somebody he works with, I guess, above him gets these houses. They don't really know why they have the houses, but that's not said in like a ominous way or anything. It sounds like, just some kind of construction management job or something. I don't know. And he's like, we'll just have to move. There's like a house for us to move into. And she's like, okay, that's not too far away. Sure. They're moving to Courtland, Virginia, which is the name of a street I used to live on. Perhaps you remember when I lived near downtown LA.
Oh, that's true.
Courtland.
I suppose so.
And the house is a bit of a fixer-upper.
You could say.
There's some furniture left behind. She's like, why is there furniture left behind? He's like, I don't know. And guess these houses were foreclosed or something. And then they find a new church to go to nearby. Grant is it's an older congregation, and Grant is immediately a celebrity as like a younger man, and a godly younger man, I should say. And he's into going with the Bible study. And Christie is not explicitly non-Christian or anything, but she seems like a little off put by the setup here and does not love this church. And you see like some kind of typical, and I don't mean it in like a mean way, but like of two church ladies who are like a little nosy with her, and in a way that doesn't feel like they mean poorly or anything, but in a way that you could tell that she's annoyed. And she's definitely leads to her feeling lonely pretty quickly being out there.
Yes.
Her husband is on the outside interacting with townsfolk and, everybody from the church, and including a police officer who comes up a couple times. doing his men's. He has some men's Bible study too. He is socializing and making friends, and is a hardworking married man on the outside, and mostly is, but you would not be able to guess then about what's going on with Christie, nor bother to, because I don't know. I guess if you have the patriarchal representation in a small town, then unless there's like major signs, then you wouldn't bother to think twice about it. That's like largely a part of the message here.
It is, but the thing I want to emphasize is that I genuinely think the movie does a really good job of keeping it ambiguous throughout like a big part of the film, because like that's what we aim at. And, you know, from the beginning of the movie, like I didn't get good vibes from Grant. You know, he seemed like a little bit of a loser to me, but there was nothing really wrong with him. And, you know, we know that Jasmine Deanne Andrews makes Christian films. He was the Christian one in the movie. And so obviously we're coming to this film with a preconception. We're coming saying like, we know how in these movies the Christian characters are rewarded.
Yeah. We're used to a Bob Revere character.
We're so used to these like Bob Revere, like perfect Christian masculine characters. And the other thing is that, you know, Christie, her intuition is obviously right on some regard. I mean, any of us in her situation, moving to a broken down house, not knowing people, just not really vibing as well with the people as Grant. I mean, it does seem like Grant is trying harder. He has some of the right ideas. He's like, well, you know, you just kind of have to try to be involved. And it might be a little tough at first. Maybe you might feel like you're faking it, but you know, sometimes with community, you do just got to kind of fake it till you make it, you know? And
yeah,
there's times during the movie, especially the first half of the movie, where it's like maybe Grant is being a little inconsiderate, but I felt like his motivation seemed right. Like when he volunteers Christie to help at the church youth picnic without really consulting her. Like that's not a very considerate thing to do, but I didn't really think that his motivations were wrong. Like maybe it would have done Christie good to try to be more involved with the church, even though the film by this point, for a couple reasons we haven't mentioned yet, is making it clear that there's definitely something up. But this is what I'm trying to say. I just think that this was a way more subtle movie with how their relationship evolved than we would come to expect from a film.
Very
like
real characters.
Yes. Because, like, you know, all couples, you know, especially like younger couples, you know, they're a family. They do everything together. They seem to be trying to do good by each other, but they just don't always. Sometimes they're inconsiderate or they take their anger out on each other. Like that just felt real. And it wasn't until shit escalated when, you know, I didn't necessarily think much stuff in the first half of the movie that Grant was doing was like by itself a huge red flag. It was like a slight red flag, but you know, there's just a million fucking Lifetime movies where Grant's character by now would have just like they would have just gave the game away instantly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, good point. No, it really is. You're really not quite sure until it's too late.
Yeah, just like Christie, which is why this is such a good like domestic horror film.
Yes, it is.
And you know, there'll be some more details to say about that. Maybe we should start to talk about these supernatural elements in this movie. I loved the hauntings in this movie.
Yeah, those are cool. So part of the reason it's confusing that Grant is getting overly controlling is because there are certain things in society that you kind of like automatically think of as one person should be in control over the other. Like, for example, if you think somebody is like losing their mind in some capacity, it is common for people to then assume whoever's closest to them should be in charge.
Yes.
Right. So something that happens early on moving into this creepy house, objectively creepy house,
Yes.
is that she sees a face inside a window of it when they're outside of the house of a boy, maybe like, what would you say, like 8, 9?
Yeah.
8? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
And with like a kind of like glowing around the edges, and very quickly disappears. And then she tells Grant that in front of his boss turned partner / still boss, asking like, oh, do people still live here? I just saw somebody. And they're like, what are you talking about? No. And he's like, why'd you embarrass me like that? And then she sees him again in a field very quickly, a glimpse. And then when she's trying to pull out of her car from the house, right? It's just when she's leaving the house to go to the grocery store or something.
Yeah.
A guy very suddenly smacks the car window and is like, have you seen him?
Have you seen this person? Have you seen him?
No, I haven't. I'm sorry.
No, have you seen him?
No, I haven't.
And he then describes, not in a lot of detail, but he's talking about the boy that she's seeing, basically.
Yes.
And it freaks her out. And she tells her husband when he gets home from work, like, oh, did you, like, this happened? He's like, what happened? What'd he do? And she's like, well, nothing. He just said that, and then I drove away because I was scared. He's like, oh, okay. He doesn't seem to care. He doesn't seem too bothered. Right. And that further adds to the tension. Then, so because of that, she's on her own. She's feeling lonely. What do people do when you are worried about something and you don't have somebody to talk to, but you do have the internet? You go on Amazon.com and order supplements that you heard other podcasters talking about, just so you can feel something, because that's what I did today. Right. Well, that's one option for sure. Another one,
what's the other option?
Would be to endlessly search and go down wormholes.
Yes.
So yeah, those are the two options to use the internet for: shopping or just doing quote unquote research on something.
Yeah,
which
is,
we all do it.
It's really just 100%. But yeah, it's like the type of research that just sort of confirms the biases you're already feeling. Now, this is an interesting theme in this film. This is a very common horror theme that repeats in a lot of domestic horror movies, where there's one person in a family who is receiving, some sort of haunting, is in tune with some sort of force that we, the audience, can tell is present because the characters experiencing it, unless, maybe we're just inhabiting their headspace and it's all in their head. And frequently, and this is a very common horror movie theme, and it will be a big theme in this movie, the fact that Christie is a woman, it is clearly, that's part of the theme that's going on here. She, as a woman, is not feeling listened to or taken seriously by her husband. And, this haunting, there's connotations between like seeing things that aren't there and mental illness. But what it's really doing, it's just a metaphor for all the different ways that she isn't like seen or heard in the relationship. And it eventually gets used as an excuse for Grant to just, take advantage of her in other ways. He just uses it as an excuse to basically try to control her more without taking it seriously. I loved the way the haunting looked in this movie. The fact that it was just like a clip art of like an 8-year-old boy with like the boundaries of the clip art with like the glow filter on.
Yeah.
like behind a bush. I was like, that's fucking scary.
Yeah.
Like this
It
term
worked.
gets used, or this comparison gets used a lot, but like legitimately some David Lynch type stuff. Because like he will do something like that, like just have like a 2D picture in a 3D space, and it's fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
liked it.
No,
I appreciated it.
It definitely worked. It definitely worked.
Oh yeah, and you know the man and the boy. You know she's the boy that she sees is this recurring ghost, and you know the man looking for the boy. I just assumed that would come up more, but it kind of doesn't. It just like adds to the ambiance and the idea of like that there may have been like a death here or like some sort of person's soul that was done a great disadvantage here.
Yeah.
And that like adds to the ambient stress with the idea of like maybe these houses were procured, you know, through either unfair means or like at the expense of other people's poverty.
Yes.
But it's not explained, you know, which I thought was cool.
Just the concept of she is seeing like sadness and scary things about where they are, and he doesn't see that. And so when she vocalizes that, he's like, no. And like,
Exactly.
like that is, it's just like a problem for him.
Yeah.
It's something she's putting on him.
Right. That's so true. Yeah. He, in his blindness, you're right. He is not in tune with the consequences or just like the bigger picture of what's going on around him. He's just like, this is fine. We just got to make the best of it. And he's ignoring these like more subtle, but still very important signs of the collapse of his day-to-day life. Yes, she sees them. And maybe, you know, she doesn't always do a good job of communicating. You know, she does kind of like take things out on him, but not that she doesn't have a reason to. And also, you know, he, for not listening to her, exacerbates that feeling. It's a dynamic that just makes itself worse. But you know, this is to say, like that is what the hauntings represent in this film.
And it's shown early on too, even before they move, like what he sees as what's the big deal? I'm participating like you wanted. He's still doing things his way in a way that inconveniences her. Like when he gets home from work and she has dinner perfectly ready, set out, and he's like, I'm going to go shower first. And then they make it clear that it's like taking a long time.
Yep.
And then he's coming back, and then, well, that was just like a funny low budget movie thing where they're not even eating for the whole time. But I guess that's how upset they were.
It's possible. Like, you know, I feel like that might be it. Like, yeah, he expects these things from her, but he's not really in tune to them. And you know what? This reminds me, I kind of want to talk about the Bible study scene because I think that was really important to the overall theme of the movie.
Oh yeah, please.
Because there's a scene, I want to say in like the second act of the film, the middle toward the end of the film, where the husband seems to be hosting a church Bible study in the house. And it almost is like she doesn't know about it, which is pretty weird to be like, oh, I'm going to invite like 7 people from church over and just not tell my wife. Like she comes in and she's like, oh, hi, everyone. You know, like she's straight up just.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like she's not interested in the Bible study, but still it's like a crazy thing to just not tell your wife that people are coming over. Like, come on. And they're talking about the story of Adam and Eve. Now, obviously, this film is called The Curse of Eve. But they're talking, one of the first discussion questions is that they ask, like, basically they ask, like, could Adam control Eve? And they ask, you know, was Eve meeting the serpent and eating the apple? Is that the first time in human history that a woman basically like disobeyed her husband or like did something outside of the knowledge of her husband? But, you know, then another person adds, well, perhaps, but also, you know, she does bring the fruit back to her husband and he takes it and eats it. You know, he makes a choice to conspire with her.
So again, back to my story about Adam and Eve. Like I said earlier, Adam was there, no doubt about it. The Bible, it says so in the Bible. I mean, he had the authority. I mean, he could have stopped this from happening. But then I think about it like this: what if he did try to stop her, and Eve bit into the apple anyway?
Yeah, that's what she did. She went ahead of Adam.
That was probably the first time a woman stepped outside a man's covering. Well, it does say that Eve did cut up the fruit and give it to Adam, and he ate willingly.
And also, the Bible studies, there's one woman there, but it does seem sort of like a men's Bible study. And they're talking about the story of Adam and Eve in this kind of like conservative, gender-oriented way, that it's a story about like women's obedience to men, and that a man has a responsibility basically to protect women from themselves. They don't say that as much in the movie, but this is just an inference I'm making based on the tone of their conversation.
Yeah. No, fair.
And that plays out because later in the film, there's a scene where she gets into like an automobile accident, and a cop from the church takes her home. And then, as she said, the cop says to the husband off screen, like, "Hey, can I have a word with you?" And they talk off screen. And what I assumed that talk was about, because it was right after the Bible study, I was assuming that it was like a man from the church basically saying to him, like, you know, your wife is kind of, you know, getting out there. You need to reel her in. Again, totally just implied by the movie. It's not said aloud, but you know, and soon after that is when he starts like putting her under lock and key even more. So it's like, you know, his manhood is threatened by her like pushing the boundaries of the relationship, asking questions that she shouldn't be asking. Like, when are you going to fix the ceiling? When are you going to fix my car? You know, things like that.
Yeah. He is complaining about it at one point shortly after he has, I think this is right after he's locked her in with like a new lock that she does not have the key to in the house, where he says, first it's the futon, then it's the hole in the ceiling, then it's fixing your car. And he's like, so you can go, basically so she can go to a job, because she does at one point. There is an art gallery that they want her to help at that's like 40 minutes away, because they live in Courtland, Virginia, and it's the middle of nowhere. And so she wants her car fixed, and he does not care. He clearly is like, that's not a priority for me.
Yes.
Because he likes being in control. He likes having his control. He felt bad, probably a little emasculated for whatever reason, however he was raised, which we do actually learn a bit about.
Yeah.
Because Ms. Andrews does a great job covering everything. But, you know, like how it started at the beginning, when he's like, she's graduating and she's young, and he hasn't graduated and he's old. And then in this setting, in the middle of nowhere, he is the breadwinner and doing all the work, and the townsfolk respect him and not her.
Yes. He, in this new social context, he's given the assumption of the authority, and that's very powerful for him. But instead of using that to empower her, the more that she reacts to that, he thinks that the solution is to continue to dismantle and disempower her. And the moment you pointed out, Scott, where he suddenly, you know, her mom, you know, comes from the old social setting, you know, her mom visits and tells her about this art gallery job. And clearly at this point in the movie, this woman needs to get out of the damn house. Like, it would do their relationship a favor if she had something to do other than the laundry. And hey, they're talking about having problems paying bills. You know, they don't have a kid yet. So if he's going to be gone all day, like, what's the harm if she has a job? You know, it seems like it would just make everybody happier. But, you know, when that is the moment in the movie, very cleverly in the script, where like we start to realize that, oh no, there's like a really big problem here. And his refusing to do this is not, it's because he wants her to fail so he can control her more. But yeah. Can't remember where I was going with this, but that's just a clever thing in the movie where suddenly it's clear that he has this idea of like a masculine control over a woman, but that gets so warped that it's not done to keep order in the family anymore. It's done to cause more disorder by disempowering her.
Yeah, it's just about him being in control and her not being in control.
Exactly.
And one thing we didn't mention yet that happens earlier on into them moving into the house is that like snakes come out of the drain.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
It's pretty crazy. It's kind of had some like Southeast Asian black magic vibes a little bit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. You know, I started to realize, and again, sort of the subtlety of the film, because at that point in the movie, it's just like, okay, they're in a little over their heads. I mean, the husband seems like he's supposed to be very handy, right? Like he was hired to fix these houses.
Yeah.
And so it's clear, we don't really see him work, but it's clear that his character is supposed to be like, he can renovate a whole house by himself, or so that's the assumption. So, it's still like, well, it's a fixer-upper. They're in over their head. But the fact that the whole movie goes on and like he never does anything to fix the house, like the same things that are problems in the beginning of the movie are still problems in the end. I started to pick up on the fact that like, oh wait, he's not actually providing anything for her. Like he is, and he's saying, oh well, you're stay at home. Like, why isn't the dinner ready? Like, why aren't you in a good mood? When I get home. But it's like, if you're going to live like that. Okay, if you decide to make that lifestyle choice, which, some would find oppressive, but there's nothing inherently wrong with that. That still there's still a part of the bargain that he is not fulfilling, and he's too blind to see that. He's not actually putting a roof over her head. Literally, there's a fucking hole in the roof.
Yeah.
And
or when she opens the fridge and goes to grab eggs, and it's just an empty carton.
Yeah.
And she's like, can I use your truck to go to the grocery store? And he's like, no, I'll get the eggs.
Right.
I'll come back with eggs.
And there's like snakes in the damn toilet.
Uh-huh.
And like, they get a guy out there to fix it. And he's just sort of like, well, I don't know. There could be snakes other places too. He is the husband. He's in over his head. And he's just basically at that point, you can tell that he wants to imprison her rather than actually like provide for her. So pretty cool.
And this whole time the smoke detector change battery alarms going off.
Yeah, which ends up being a really like astute like motif in the film. Like, yeah, the house is yelling at them, please fix me, please. He's not doing anything about it.
About things that can easily be fixed if you just take the time to focus on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, hole in the roof needs to be fixed, but that's not a one-day job. Smoke detector, that's a one-day job, Yeah. You can at least do that for your wife who's home all day, that's your choice that she's home all day. You want her to be home all day with all the chores done and happy to see you. But how's she going to be happy to see you with the fucking smoke alarm beeping all day? I wanted to point out, because there is an interesting theme in the movie about like Native American spirituality, and with the land that they're on. It's cool how this is explored in the movie. At first she's worried. She's done some research, and she finds out that she is living on Chero and Haka land, and you already mentioned this earlier in the discussion, Scott, but she finds a news story of like graves from this tribe that were disrupted and never returned like back to proper form, very disrespectful. And she puts it together in her paranoid womanly mind. She puts together that the haunting she is seeing might be related to that. So she decides to visit like a tribal elder. She goes to like a tribal center. She meets a chief of the Chero and Hakka people. And I thought this was really cool and interesting for a Christian movie. She talks to the man for a while. I would assume this is like a real tribe and this was like an authentic member of the tribe. You know, he's acting for the film, but he's giving her real information. And I was wondering, like, was this going to be like considered pagan in in contrast to Christianity? But actually, no. He talks about that the Native Americans, yeah, they practice their own tribal traditions, but they also have something called the Native American Crusade for Christ, which seems to be like a Christian religious meeting.
And then we do a Native American Revival Crusade for Christ, the Great Awakening of the Holy Spirit. We do that on the second Saturday in September.
That sounds so interesting. I'll definitely have to come check it out.
Okay.
And they also have a name for the Christian God. They call him Quakahunte.
So you're telling me I should call him the Lord?
You should always call on our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who in our native tongue we say Quakahunte.
Quakahunte.
So we say Quakahunte.
I thought that was pretty interesting and has to be based on something real because it was too specific.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I would assume that that's real information. And yeah, so it was cool. Like that almost becomes like a little bit of an escape for her. Like it's like the first person who she's sort of connected to authentically. And
yeah.
You know, the movie and he invites her to revisit and come to their festival. She does go and visit without her husband's permission, which they kind of argue about later. But yeah, my concern was that they were going to like paint that person as like a pagan. But no, they make it explicit. Like he practices tribal tradition, but they have a relationship with Christianity as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really like she's doing things that are so natural to do when you move to a new place for what she desires and for what she is attempting to do. And he tries to stop her at every turn, even when he finds out that she's like regularly doing this. As soon as it's a regular thing for her, he gets mad.
Right. And mind you, you know, he is being very domineering about where he wants to go. You know, he gives her shit for not wanting to participate in the church. I mean, hey, listen, as to follow the logic of the Christian movies we watch, yeah, if you're a Christian, you should be going to church every Sunday. But, you know, there's got to be, well, I don't know, it's a pretty sparse area. But I was like, he couldn't, try out a different church and see how they both like that, you know? Before it was too, I mean, by that point, he became very attached to the church because they liked him. But, you know, what I'm trying to say is like, it becomes clear. It's just all about him. And he projects that on her and says, oh, it's all about you.
Yeah. It leads to eventually he is straight up, I want to say first, right before we say what he ends up doing.
Yes.
He blames why they can't see his family, his parents, why they wouldn't even come to the wedding, why he wouldn't even invite them to the wedding.
Right.
They are liberals. When he became a Christian, that was pretty much that.
Interesting.
You know?
Interesting.
That growing up in a liberal household, becoming a Christian was the worst thing I could have done.
Growing up in a liberal household, becoming a Christian was the worst thing that could ever happen to me.
Happens all the time.
Very sad.
Yeah, I mean, we take that story for granted just because, you know, we're watching a movie. That's what the character tells us. We don't question it. But he does mention it a couple times in the film. And yeah, every Christian character that hears it is just like, oh, yes, of course. At the end of the movie, when we learn who Grant really is and what he's done, I started to realize, like, even for a Christian movie, that's just like pretty obviously some bait to use to impress other Christian people. Because, like, listen. We all know liberals can be annoying with their bumper stickers, appropriating camo hats, etc. We all know. But I just personally haven't heard in real life a lot of stories of liberals disowning someone in their family who decides to become Christian. I mean, they might mock it, religion that is, but I don't know, the idea of being like disowning your child, because your adult child, because he became Christian, it just seems like a chain email type of plot, which again, to Jasmine's credit, I took it for granted, and then as more was revealed, I was like, aha.
He knew it would work. He knew he wouldn't have to say anything else if he said that.
And listen, to be fair, if an Uber driver told me that, I would just say, oh, wow. Yeah. Which very well could happen, because the other day I talked to a man who went on and on about how DEI was ruining movies. And I had to say, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Oh my God.
So what else
did he cite examples? Did he cite examples?
Absolutely not. He was just like, I can't even. He was like, by the way, I actually don't know what race this man was, but he was a person of color, racially ambiguous. He said this like 4 times. He was like, I can't even go to the movies anymore because of the DEI. It's like people can't even act. It's like he was like, and I support diversity, but it's like you need to be a good actor. And I was just like, yeah, man, I know what you mean.
Oh my God.
Because what am I gonna say? I'm fucking in his car.
You're like, maybe you just don't know about the good movies.
Well, he was like the Godfather. Like that's a perfect movie. And I was like, yeah, great movie. You should see Megalopolis. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, if a man told me in the car that he was disowned by his liberal family for being a Christian, I would just be like, wow, that's horrible.
Yeah, good point. I need to make like business cards that just say Tubi.tv on them.
Yeah.
It'll be business cards for Tubi. My name won't be anywhere. This when people start talking about this, will be like, here, go to this website, and on the back there will be like a QR code that also goes to the Tubi app.
Yeah, they're like, people are like, oh, do you work there? And you're like, no.
Just trying to help.
I'm just trying to help you find any movie that you want. I don't know. I'm very mad at Tubi after they cut out scenes from Bad Lieutenant.
They did?
I tried to watch the original Bad Lieutenant on Tubi because it came up spontaneously. Because I told this to a friend and they're just like, well, why didn't you just like download it? And I'm like, listen, I was just at some people's house and we were talking about it. So we put it on. Yeah. It was on Tubi. It wasn't my fault. Oh, and they cut out at least 2 very important scenes in the movie, including the full frontal nudity.
Jeez. What the hell?
And I was actually so angry that my sister got mad at me. Because I ruined the vibe.
Oh man!
But what can I say? I love movies.
Fair, did you ruin the vibe, or did the person who cut that out ruin the vibe?
That's what I was telling her.
They literally cut out the vibe.
I'm saying it's not my fault that the vibe is ruined. I'm responding to the vibe being ruined. I'm not the one who ruined the vibe. She wasn't.
Exactly.
That's what I was saying.
Hey, I'm on your side here. That's crazy though. It's not on like Criterion or something.
It probably was at one point. Well, again, I was at other people's house. It wasn't my own.
Yeah.
See, if it was my own house, I would have simply, I would have turned on SoulSeek, or I would have turned on the Criterion channel. I got really fast internet. I could turn a movie in like a minute over here. So I'm sorted. But again, you trust these services. What I'm trying to say is you trust these services.
Of course.
And I was so mad. I was like telling my friends, I was like, never watch a movie on Tubi again. Obviously that didn't happen. I did that a couple weeks later.
Of course.
That's crazy. I mean, you can't say that, but that's how I felt.
Too much.
I was mad.
They have too much. This movie, however, is not on Tubi.
No.
It is
where'd
Vimeo, Vimeo on demand.
Okay.
Thanks to unsulliedbrideproductions.com or whatever. What's the website? It's like the unsulliedbride.com or something.
Sullied Bride, yeah.
Unsullied Bride. They use the term unsullied in the movie too. Where she says something about she wouldn't want, or no, she says, I wouldn't want to sully your reputation.
Right, like you really would. Like you're going to sully your precious reputation.
The tension continues. The music continues, which is well done. It adds to the tension. And the smoke detector continues. Things are getting nutso. Christie being locked in the house becomes not good enough for Grant. So he does what any loving husband would do. He ties her up in a chair. And goes to church. Goes to church without her. And they start like, oh, I'm sorry, your wife doesn't come. You're such a good man. We'll pray for you. We're praying for him. Meanwhile, Christie's mom has not been able to get a hold of Christie. And so she comes to the house. And this is after he answered her cell phone before and was like, she's not feeling well right now. Literally as she's tied up, like trying to speak through a gag.
Yeah.
She tries calling her again, is not getting an answer, of course. So she decides she's just going to show up with soup, make her daughter feel better, goes to the house, knocks on the back door, knocks on a window, isn't quite sure what's going on. Then Grant gets home and is like, oh, what are you doing here? And she's like, my daughter lives here. And he's like, oh, well, she's sick, so can't come in. One thing leads to another. It is made clear Christie, after all morning, has managed to finally get free. And even that kind of looked real. I could kind of buy it the way it was set up and the way it would take a long time to get out of, but be possible. The way she was tied up. And then she bangs on the window. Her mom sees her. She throws the hot soup into Grant's dick. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Stuns him momentarily. And the chase is on. He's violent with both of them. It's just crazy from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's messed up.
I was going to say, ladies, if he's tying you up before he goes to church, it's a red flag.
Yeah, that is.
And then if he's tying you to the railroad tracks, I would say do not go on another date with him. If a man ties you to the railroad tracks, do not fuck him.
Yeah, that's good advice.
But hey, I wouldn't want to tell a woman what to do.
He manages to knock out her mom. She is hiding in the house, sneaking around, grabs a knife from a drawer, stabs him in the leg when he comes in the room past her. It turns into a slasher briefly. He's just like a scary guy chasing her. And finally comes down to them sort of facing off, where he goes on this rant about his parents. What really happened is with his parents. But part of that is him saying that they were real liberals, but his mother ran over his father most of his life. He's like, and you're doing it to me now too. Just projecting this stuff that he's never dealt with.
I wasn't lying to you when I told you that my parents were real liberals. My mother, she ran over my father, basically almost all his life. She didn't know how to be a wife or a mother. I was really hoping to find that in you. Someone different. Someone special. But you're just like her.
Christie knifes him, hits him with a shovel.
And then calls 911 or whoever. And then as her mom's going away in the ambulance, the last thing she says is like, I never liked him. She is like, yeah, okay. Well, helpful to say to your daughter now.
Yeah, but I guess that was
But fair
supposed to
enough.
be because then Christie is like, well, why did you never tell me? And the mom says, because you were the one marrying him. She wanted to be supportive of her daughter.
Yeah.
So I
Well.
think it was like a little bit sweet, maybe.
She
I
meant
don't
well. Look where
I guess
it
she
got
meant
them.
well. Yeah, right. And then the final reveal where the church members themselves learn about the news. They say, this whole time he was coming here asking us to pray for his wife, he had her tied up in the damn kitchen. And then one of the church members, in a very didactic way, looks at all the church and is like, well, that's because you just saw a young man come in here and, you thought he was great. You never even stopped to think about it.
Yep.
And that shuts them all up.
And then he had that poor girl locked up in the house while we were here praying for him.
And I thought, sure, it was her. And this whole time he was abusing her.
He did everything to make us believe he was so righteous when he was isolating her.
You just never know with some people.
You sure don't.
You can know with some people. You all are so nosy about everything else in people's lives. But you were so infatuated with a young man coming in church that you didn't looking further than what he presented to you.
Is this something that happens? Is Jasmine is this a common church dynamic?
Well, that's the thing I thought was so good about the whole message was that it wasn't even a matter of like common church message. It was like a dynamic that happens in like a lot of parts of American society.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas like a patriarch is kind of given the benefit of the doubt and you don't, not to like overstep unless something's really obviously bad going on.
Right. That's a good point. Not quite the same theme, but the way that this movie was subtle and also was offering a critique to Christians of intra-church dynamics reminded me of that thriller, Thy Neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, another one of our... Honestly, I would say this and Thy Neighbor are two of our most like genuinely subtle films we've watched. And maybe that was because they were both films that were not simply trying to make their Christian audiences feel good for being Christian, but to actually, they were marketed toward Christian audiences, but they were trying to teach a lesson about dynamics within that social group, the religious social group. And that's very interesting. We don't watch a lot of Christian films like that. Most Christian films we watch are meant to flatter the viewer or just to be like either flatter the viewer or just to be like, just feel good because, you're a Christian and God will take care of everything, which like, hey, that's fair enough. Like that's part of the point of Christianity. I'm just saying as people who've watched hundreds of these films, it's just more interesting to see something like this.
Absolutely. And this really confronts the viewer. And, the more that we say it, like, the smoke detector thing's so good. Because like
So
what
good.
is more confronting?
Yeah, like legitimately I kept pausing the movie when I heard it. It started like the third time I heard it. First time I was like, oh, that's weird. It's like in the movie. And then the third time I heard it, I literally like paused the movie and waited for 5 minutes. I was like, let me see if it's going to happen again. And then I was like, oh, no, wait, it's definitely. Then I tried to find it in the movie and then I isolated it. I was like, oh, okay. A very, confrontational choice. I'm agreeing with what you said. Yeah. I mean, again, this film was not being critical. It wasn't like an atheist film saying, oh, well, Christians are so stupid. Not at all.
No.
I think it's pretty clear that I would assume that Ms. Andrews is a Christian. I mean, it's been a huge motif of the two movies of hers that we've watched. But it was kind of cool that she was doing like a feminist critique of Christian social dynamics.
Yeah, absolutely. And not really
this film is really about
putting anything on Christianity. To your point, it's really just saying like you can fall into these social dynamics really.
Yeah.
And they can be dangerous if you're not
these
looking at them honestly.
Right. Exactly. Oh, so for instance, like Grant, he is a character who he felt he says at the very beginning of the movie he feels insecure. And so he tried to protect his pride, and then his pride made him get lost in this kind of idea that like the problem with their relationship was that, Christie was being too challenging of a wife. And he wasn't looking at the idea of like, what am I? Could it actually be because I am not living up to my promise as a provider? And that's what's causing the strife. He was not unable to do that.
No.
That's sort of, I would say that was like the root of his character flaw, other than the fact that he was like a murderer. But, that aside, I would say that was his root flaw. And it was pretty subtle, pretty interesting.
Yeah, it worked well. I really like this. I'm looking forward to checking out more Jasmine Deanne Andrews movies.
I agree with you. I'm looking forward to watching Natalie's Abortion with my friends.
Yeah. Fuck. No, she posted part of an assault scene from that movie on her Instagram. Like maybe a year ago.
Oh.
I was just like, geez, I don't... I'll get to it, but...
Wait, look at her Instagram.
This is a director who's willing to have the smoke detector alarm beep for an entire movie. So
yes.
I don't think she's going to shy away from anything.
Nope.
Good for her.
Exactly right.
Good director.
I'm looking for... there she is, followed by Rem Lazar.
Yep. Which you can watch on Tubi. Although now I'm wondering if they deleted some scenes from creating Rem Lazar on Tubi.
Oh wow, here's her we'll see. We'll just have to find out. This is her caption for her post from 2 years ago about the film Natalie's Abortion. People who don't have to deal with the reality of rape, incest, and unwanted pregnancy feel entitled to impose their fake mortality. I think she meant to say morality. Their fake morality onto others. Is this a pro-abortion movie? She also has a post earlier than that where it's a picture of a flower, and on there it's a caption: "Men practicing abstinence is the best anti-abortion policy." And her caption continues: "Men play a role in unwanted pregnancy, and they should take responsibility for containing their seed rather than focus on restricting women." I mean, facts.
Yeah. Where's the lie?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I don't know. Discussion for another day. I mean, I'm sure there'd be some Christians with, who would say it's wrong of her to say that, abortion is okay in certain circumstances, but also, she has a point, it all comes down to like the woman's choice with regards to emotion. What about the man's choice to have sex outside of marriage?
There you go.
What about it? We'll find out.
What about Grant's choice? He goes to church.
Yeah, what about Grant's choice?
And Gramps. What about Gramps' choice?
What about Gramps' choice? You know that meme where it's like, I consent. Isn't there someone you forgot to ask? And it's a picture of Jesus. It's like that, but there's a picture of Gramps. Speaking of men and their choices, what do we choose to rate this movie?
I genuinely loved this movie. It's really good. I'll watch it again in the future. We should probably screen it, especially because it is not on Tubi.
Yeah.
They would have cut out the good parts anyway. Maybe. Just kidding. I love Tubi. I am going to give this great film 100 out of 100 smoke detector beeps. It is time to change that battery, but not until you get the message. Which, for the first time that I can remember on this pod, went beyond the church and beyond Christianity itself, and what it was trying to achieve and did achieve.
For real. Should we put smoke detector chirps in this entire podcast? Like every 45 seconds, just like
it'll be a bonus for patrons. You can have us.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, do smoke detector mode. That's actually really funny. I'll consider it. But I also love this movie. As I said, basically the only movie in its league I can think of that we watched is one called Thy Neighbor, which we watched maybe 2 years ago. And, that's another movie that has a strong Christian message, but deals with some, what's the word? Just some some gray areas that come through, difficulties in like a Christian social group. In the movie Thy Neighbor, there's the idea of like, I can save anyone. There's a pastor who thinks, he could save anyone if they would only listen to him. And he likes the idea of like a difficult case. He invites a man to church who's a very difficult case in the community. And what happens? Really bad stuff. It becomes a bad choice to have invited this man with obvious red flags to church. And, obviously this is like a thriller movie, but you got to know that that's going to happen sometimes. It's like, yeah, where does the Christian covenant of, oh, yeah, every bad person is just someone who hasn't gone to church yet? Is that actually true? Or are there some people you are protecting your congregation from by excluding them socially? That's sort of what that movie is about. I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah. And having like the hubris to be like, even though it's not usually looked at this way, but to be like, all I need to do is smile and give a firm handshake and be a good neighbor, and it'll take care of itself from there. And no, you're actually only thinking of yourself.
Exactly. Yes, that was what that movie was sort of about. It was about like the pride of the pastor, and this movie in a way is also about pride. About Grant trying to preserve his pride at being a man and going about it in all the wrong way. He should have gone to my male bonding conference where we live on an island with no women for 6 months. We work out. But that's
Grant,
for another
you still can.
podcast.
That's where he went.
Still
that's
can.
Where he disappeared to in the end.
I will be putting the details for our next retreat in the description of this episode. Check them out. No. I got to give this movie, which I thought was very cool and subtle, 3 out of 3 snakes in the damn toilet. That's right.
3 too many, if you ask me.
I agree, but at the same time, a perfect score. Hey,
absolutely.
All this October, do yourself a favor. Before you sit down on the damn toilet, why don't you open the lid and make sure there aren't any snakes in there? You would really hate if that happened, wouldn't you?
And make sure it's not a cursed toilet, too. There's a movie I saw on Tubi called Death Toilet, and it's about a cursed toilet.
Interesting. Yeah, I would avoid a cursed toilet But if you can't, if you absolutely need to go, check it for snakes before you sit down. That's just a little pro tip here. Well, another exciting Christian thriller for the month of October. I know we got a couple more in the queue. So, this Halloween season, make sure you're celebrating it in a wholesome way. And hey, you already are if you're here. So thank you very much for listening. If you really like what we do and want to support and get extra bonus episodes, hear all the reviews of the Christian horror films we review this month instead of just the ones on the public feed, go to patreon.com/boysbiblestudy. And also, special thanks to our patrons at the $20 tier, who we shout out at the end of every episode. Thank you very much. Nicole, Marissa, Jeff, Rhett, and Mark. Our outro music is the song Oh My God by Mary. From all of us here at Boys Bible Study, myself, Ash, my co-hosts, Scott and Julian, we would like to say, peace be with you.
And also with you.
No, you're not going to be ordering me around. I've had to put up with a lot. Now, as your husband, I'm taking a stand, and I'm saying no to you.
No, you are not going to just say no to me. Do you not even care anything that I just said? I told you that I wanted to leave and you're just going to walk out?
You're driving me away.
You're really going to just ignore me? No, you need to come back and do something about this right now.
I've already said no. That's just the curse of Eve. You want to be over us, but you can't control me.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I feel your love in me, it's coming from within. Oh my God, my devotion is so unwavering. Divine emotions when you enter me. Every day you